Hello guys, hopefully can you hear me? Are you able to hear and see me today? I'm struggling again with my computer to get everything working, but I can see a number of you online, which is wonderful. Hello and welcome to the stream, guys. I can see John Hayes. Hello from Windsor, Ontario, Canada. I'd like to see you working on a piece with a voiceover talking about what you're thinking, your mindset for what you're trying to achieve. Well, that's a great question, John. Hello guys, hope you can hear me and see me all right. Yeah, I've just been wrestling again with my computer. I think I need to get myself a brand new computer. One of these days, I'm going to manage to do a live stream without any problems at all. Welcome guys, welcome to the live stream. Yeah, it is now 5:25 to 9 in the evening or in the morning, wherever you are. Hi. Everyone, can you hear me and see me? Yeah, visuals and audio good here in Ohio, USA. HM fan 2010, thank you so much for confirming that. Yeah, I have just been struggling like mad with this computer. You know what's the really weird thing, guys? Is my computer's been working fine all day. This happened last week on the stream. I think it knows I'm going to go live and decides it's just going to play silly buggers. So basically about an hour or so before the stream came on, I lost my internet connection again. But we're back for the time being. No echoes, all good, no echoes. That is wonderful. Thank you so much for hanging on for me, guys. I've got a lovely video for you today. I've just been doing some more painting of our skull. I've added some yellow silver stain. I've made a little video of it, and I'm actually going to show you that video today as well. And I'm also open for questions. So really, it's a very chilled live stream today where I'm just going to chat and chill with you guys. You are a wonderful community, and you're turning up each week for me, and I'm turning up for you guys, and we are together building this community. So it's wonderful. I'm going to say a few hellos to a few people. So John Hayes from Windsor, Ontario in Canada. Hi John, thank you for your suggestion. I'd like to see you working on a piece with a voiceover talking about what you're thinking in your mindset, what you're trying to achieve. Well, I've actually got a video for you to play, which I will do later on in the live stream today, John, which is talking a little bit about the processes of using yellow, silver stain and enamels, etc. to colorize the skull. Do you remember the skull we were doing our sgraffito work with last week? Well, that's fired in the kiln. We've applied another subsequent layer to that. So that has been all fired, and today I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll film the process of colorizing that skull, and so I put that video together and I've just uploaded it onto my platform, so hopefully I'll be able to show it to you. John says, I'm very new understanding stained glass and very new trying to understand glass painting and how to understand how these two merge together technically and the thinking behind the methods. Okay, John, that's great. Well, welcome. If you're very new, it's fantastic that you're here. It's fantastic that everyone is here today. John goes on to say, I may be wrong thinking this way. I feel that painting part from me feels like realism and the stained glass is background abstract. Yeah, well, there are kind of intertwined disciplines, John, but they are separate in the sense that stained glass making is very much a craft. So you are using your hands and using analog techniques to kind of make things with your hands, which is probably the definition of a craft. Where painting is more akin to an art form in the sense that you are you're also making things, but you can perhaps put a little bit more esoteric expressions into your paintings, and you can maybe examine ideas a little bit more nuanced in a little bit more nuanced way with painting than you can with maybe just a direct stained glass window. Stained glass windows are colored pieces of glass cut together, cut into shapes and leaded together in a matrix. When you start to apply paint to that, then you kind of elevate the whole thing, and you can perhaps impart a message or engender a set of feelings. I mean, it's a very complicated and interesting question. Let me just say hello to a few more people. Dean Browett says, hi all. Hello, Dean. Welcome to the channel. Welcome on board. Thunderwood Underwood, hi from Marmonsbury, Wiltshire. Malmesbury, Wiltshire. Hello, Thunderwood Underwood. It is wonderful that you're joining us today, and it's fantastic to see so many channel members here as well. Wonderful to see all my channel members joining. John Hayes says hello from Windsor, Ontario. Gremlins at work, hoping nothing froze. Yeah, gremlins are fully at work today, John. Yeah, I didn't even think I was going to make this live stream. I literally just managed to go live in the last, sort of couple of minutes after 8:30. So yeah, I'm here. Let's hope. Let's hope I stay live. There's not going to be any echoes and things like that. Raining here. Hope I don't get bumped offline. I hope you don't get bumped offline either. Jerry Z says hello everyone. Hello everyone from Georgia. Hello Jerry Z. Thanks for joining us today. It's fantastic that you're here. EFO Ethel. Hello. Good evening, everyone from Argyll in Scotland. Hope everyone is good. Yes, we are. I hope you're good as well. Ethel, it's fantastic that you are joining us today, a channel member, and I know you're working your way through various painting sessions on my online course. So it's we've been corresponding through that, and it's great that you're joining us today as well. Thunderwood Underwood confirms, yes, can see and hear you. That is great. Here we go. Yehudith. Hi from Yehudith. Hello, Yehudith. Great that you're joining us. I know you're about 3 hours ahead of us, so it's in the wee late hours of the evening for you, but it's fantastic you're joining us. Everybody in chat, if you have any questions, ask the questions in chat. I'm here for you guys for the next hour to answer questions for you and to chill and chat all things stained glass. HM Fan 2010 says visuals and audios good here in Ohio, USA. Jane Arney. Hi Derek from Kent. Hi Jane. Welcome. How are you doing? How's your day been, Jane? Let us know in chat how you've got on today. Are you a stained glass creative? Are you new to it? Are you a seasoned professional? Are you just curious? Have you just jumped onto the live stream and just wonder what it's all about? Well, today's live stream is a series of live streams that we started, oh my goodness, about 20 live streams ago, maybe 19, 20 live streams ago now. And I'm doing them once a week on a Tuesday at 8:30 for an hour to an international audience of fellow creatives who are interested in glass and stained glass and designing and painting and all things to do with the wonderful world of stained glass. So welcome to you, Jane, that you're here today. Gaynor Edwards says, evening all from North Essex. Gaynor, hello and welcome to the channel today. It's great to have you here. All good, says John. Yeah, fantastic. Wall to wall here, says Dean Browett. That is great to know. We may just manage to do it. I don't want to jinx it by saying that we're going to get all the way through the stream today, but I really do hope we will. And I am going to be looking for a new computer, I think, because I don't know what's wrong with it. I thought I'd fixed it. We had all these problems with echoes and everything last week, and I had to abandon the live stream, and then I came back on again. I actually thought I'd fixed the problem. And for the whole of the week, there had been no problems with my internet connection, my Ethernet connection, until an hour before the live stream today. And I don't know what it is. I was actually watching some YouTube Zoom call that I was on, and that was working fine, but I couldn't get my main computer to work. But we're working now. Ride Forth Singing, good afternoon. Hello, Ride Forth Singing. Welcome again, Ride Forth Singing. I love that name, always love that name. It's great that you're with us today. Thunderwood Underwood says, tech is great when it's working and a nightmare when it doesn't. Tell me about it, Thunderwood Underwood, tell me about it. Oh my goodness, yeah, it's driving me crazy. Late night here, Yehudith. Large pieces that can't fit into a kiln. What processes are done, if any, for not going in kilns? So large pieces that can't fit into a kiln. So basically, if you're making stained glass, John, and you're using glass paints, which are basically called vitreous paints. Vitreous is basically glass. So glass paints that are applied to glass either by airbrushing or silkscreen printing or by painting, all have to be fired at a high temperature onto the surface of the glass in order to make them permanent. So You have to get that glass somehow into a kiln and fire it in a kiln. So, you know, there isn't another way around it. You might want to use a different medium altogether, John. If you're making large pieces, you might want to do a silkscreen printing of regular colors, you know, like silkscreen printing colors that you can print onto acetate. I've done some projects where rather than printing stained glass, rather than making stained glass and firing it in the kiln, I've actually printed designs onto the surface of the glass. So you could go down that route, John, but generally speaking, when you are working with traditional stained glass paints, they have to be fired at about 650 degrees centigrade, which I think is 1202 degrees Fahrenheit, that kind of a temperature. And that fuses the glass paint onto the surface of the glass and makes it permanent. There's no way around it. That's the way you got to do it, unfortunately, or fortunately, because that is the nature of our craft, is that you need to fire the paint in the kiln. Karen Devan says, hello Derek, hello everyone. Hello Karen, welcome on board, another channel member. It's great here. Hello again. Had to reboot. Jerry, have you got the gremlins as well? My God, had to reboot. We're all having to reboot tonight. Jane Arney says, I did my first stained glass workshop a couple of weeks ago and actually made a piece of artwork that I can be proud of, just starting out in this amazing craft. Jane, that is wonderful to hear. This channel is really made for folk like you, people who are coming new to the craft of stained glass and glass painting, who are curious and interested to learn. I'm here to try and help you on your journey by giving you as much good help and advice as possible. But it sounds like you've been on a great stained glass workshop a couple of weeks ago already and have been making some artwork. So that's wonderful. Tell us, Jane, are you going back on these workshops? Are you going to be doing them regularly, or was it a one-off? Do you have your own workspace in a part of your home, or are you working at a workshop on a course and using their facilities? A lot of people, when they're starting out, don't necessarily want to invest in all the kit straight away, but will use the kit and equipment and glass and lead and all the rest of it provided by course providers, which is always a great way to start. John Hayes says, I've watched old glass signs glue chipped, gold leaf, etc. Even seen methods turning a mirror to look Victorian. Have you painted on mirrors? Great question, John. That is a different discipline altogether. That is gold leaf work and silver leaf work and glue chip work. There's an amazing glass artist in Cornwall in the UK called David Smith. You possibly know about him. He's very kind of well known in the world of mirrors, glass signs and mirrors. And he does the most incredible glue chip work and painting on mirrors. Those are cold enamels. Those are enamels that are a little bit like nail polish. You can, if you imagine nail polish that's put onto nails, it's an oil-based pigment that's translucent but highly colored. They are called cold enamels, and basically when you're applying color to the backside of mirrors, you tend to use cold enamels for that. Excuse me. Rather than glass paints, which are, I know it's slightly confusing, the terminology, but glass paints in the context of stained glass are ground down glass, or ground down, for enamels, a ground down glass, or iron oxide, which is like a ground down rust, mixed up with a few other ingredients and painted onto the glass and then fired at a high temperature. So there are two different processes, John. Mirror work, glue chipping, gold leaf work. It's all done cold without the use of a kiln. But stained glass, silver staining, and shading and texturizing and enamel work, that's all done with a kiln. All of that is done with a kiln because you need the heat in order to activate the paint. The paint won't be permanently adhered to the glass unless it is fired in a kiln. Jane says, any tips for soldering as my lines are thick? I'm thinking of using a smaller tip and thinner foil. Okay, Jane, so you're working with copper foil. Yeah, so you can get different gauge foils, as you possibly know. Thick to thin, it's like a it's like a sellotape, but it's made of copper with one sticky side and one copper side. And you can also cut your copper foil down. Once you've applied it to either side of the glass, you can actually take a sharp scalpel knife and trim the copper wire down to make it thinner that way. So if you're finding that your lines, your copper lines, once you solder them, are a little bit thick and a little bit dense, try and find a little craft knife, a little sharp craft knife. You can take a bit off each edge of your copper foil before you run flux down it and before you solder it, and you'll get a thinner line. And you can get really quite thin lines if you use copper foil carefully. Seem to be going in and out of focus today as well. But yeah, that's definitely also using a smaller tip, as you have suggested in your chat question. Using a smaller tip and using thinner foil is going in the right direction for creating thinner lines. If you have also if you're applying too much solder, maybe overusing the solder, you can find that you can get really quite thick, dense solder lines, and you may want to get something that's a lot slimmer, a lot thinner. Practice makes perfect, as with all of these things, Jane. Practice makes perfect. It's difficult for all of us when we first start. I don't think anybody would pretend that making stained glass windows or making copper foil windows or painting on glass is easy. What's deceptive is that understanding the principles of it are easy. You can understand how to mix paints, how to apply paints. You'll understand that in an afternoon. It doesn't take long to understand the processes, but putting those processes into practice and doing it again and again until you get a finesse, a delicacy, it starts to flow, but it does take a while for that to happen. So don't expect instant results. Instant results won't happen with those delicate skill techniques that we're talking about, like copper foiling and soldering, etc. They do take time to learn, but don't be disheartened. It's quite okay to make mistakes. It's quite okay to get it wrong. We all get things wrong to start with. We all make mistakes. Don't become disillusioned. See it as one step closer to understanding the method every time you do it. And if you aim to get 1% better every time you work on it, in 10 days you're 10% better. In 50 days you're 50% better. And you know how it goes. You're going to be 100% better in 100 days. And it may feel that you're only making that 1% improvement every day, but consistency and showing up and practice is going to get you the results. And you will get there. When I first started stained glass, and I left art school to work in a commercial professional studio, I was appalling. I was terrible. The reason I was terrible is because art school doesn't really teach you commercially how to make stained glass windows quickly. It teaches you about the art. It teaches you about, creative ideas and thinking. It doesn't really teach you about the craft. So my craft skills were really poor. And I was awful to start with. And it took a while. It took months for me to actually even get to the point where I was competent. It happens to all of us. We all have to learn somewhere along the line. So Paula G says, here from Brazil, Ubatuba, thanks a lot. Hello, Paula G. Welcome from Brazil. It's great that you're here with us today. Karen Devan, channel member, says, Derek, do you stretch your lead cane? Is it absolutely necessary to do so? Great question, Karen. The answer is no. It's not absolutely necessary to do it. It actually depends on the type of lead. Believe it or not, there are different makes of lead with different characteristics. Some leads are very soft and very malleable, and they're really floppy and easy to bend. And when you bend them, they tend not to crinkle. If you're bending a lead around, say, a small circle, sometimes you might find that the lead starts to crinkle and crease as it curves around the circumference of a circle. That sometimes is indicative that the lead is quite a hard lead. Lead makers can add things like antimony into the lead so that it toughens the lead up and makes it harder. It's a little bit more robust and durable, but it's harder to bend. So the hard leads don't necessarily need to be stretched quite as much as the soft leads. The reason we would want to stretch the soft lead is because it's soft, it tends to fold up and it tends to crinkle and crease and twist, and the stretching action untwists a lot of the lead came. If you actually have a slightly twisted piece of lead came and you put it in your vise, your lead vise, and you go to the other end and you stretch your lead out with a pair of pliers and you very gently apply pressure to it, the lead really only has to expand by about, a couple of centimeters or less than an inch. Just pull it a little bit less than an inch, and what you find is all the kinks tend to straighten out, especially with soft lead. So to answer your question, it depends on the lead that you're working with. If you've got a very hard lead, typically the European leads, I know a lot of you are not in Europe, so you won't be buying European leads, but the Stillemans lead from Belgium or the J&B lead are quite hard leads, and they don't necessarily need to be stretched. But if you're in the UK and you buy Arnold Heaps lead, I know that's quite a mouthful, but it is a long established lead maker. They make very soft lead, and so I always end up stretching that. In the States, do tell us, what are the makers of the lead makers' names that you guys use stateside, and do tell us in chat, do you have to stretch the lead where you are? I'd love to know. I've never really bought any American lead. We don't have any suppliers here in the UK that supply American lead, but I'd love to know in the chat from you guys whether you have to stretch your lead or not. Jane says, any tips for soldering? Oh, we've done that one. Dean says, I sometimes get some bubbling on the outlines of my painting. What causes that? Yeah. Dean says, I sometimes get some bubbling on the outlines of my painting. What causes that? Okay, great question, Dean. So if you're painting, say, trace lines in a tracing black, a Reusch tracing black, or a Bister brown, you'll probably be adding gum arabic to that. If you're painting with water, that is. Water and gum arabic. What tends to happen is if you add a little bit too much gum arabic to your mixture, it can fry in the kiln, and that will create that bubbling. So the bubbling effect is the gum arabic boiling as it heats up in the kiln. It is basically an organic gum arabic, and it will boil in the kiln if there's lots of it in the paint. So the idea is to kind of carefully add only enough gum arabic in order to help the paint stick to the glass and help the paint flow from your brush. If you are using painting with a vinegar, for example, what you can find is that the vinegar sometimes froths the paint and can create a frothy paint consistency. And I was reading recently, now to answer your question as to why vinegar can make the paint froth, it basically traps air, or it effervesces with the paint. And one way that Jonathan recommends that you can reduce the effervescence, wait for it, is earwax. Adding a little bit of earwax to your paint, your vinegar-based paint, will reduce the effervescence of the paint. I'd never heard of that until I read it in Jonathan's book, but apparently it's an old recipe from years ago that recommended either your own earwax or someone else's earwax. I don't know if animal earwax would work, but that calms down the effervescence with vinegar. But generally speaking, most of us will be painting with water and gum arabic. So the reason for the bubbling is a little bit too much gum arabic. Reduce the amount of gum arabic in your mixture, and you should find that the paint won't fry in the kiln. Long answer to your question, but hopefully it was a good roundabout way of answering why the paint tends to fry from time to time. Let's hear. John Hayes says, are there companies that you can send large pieces to be fired in a glass kiln? Yes, there are. Depends where you are, John, in the world. You can send large pieces of glass to various commercial companies here in the UK and in Europe. So one company that, if you are based in the UK, and I don't know if you are, John, but if you are, one of the companies that you can make contact with is Proto Studios. Proto Studios in the UK, they are makers of large-scale stained glass installations, and they use screen printing mostly to decorate glass, and they will have access to large kilns. You may want to reach out to Proto Studios, John, just to see if they would be prepared to fire your glass. I'll give you a word of caution on that, because a lot of studios are very reluctant to fire other people's glass in their kilns, just in case the glass breaks, especially toughening plants, that sometimes you can put painted glass through the toughening process, and that will actually fire pigment onto the glass because you're heating the glass up and then you're cooling it down quickly. A lot of toughening glass plants will not be comfortable about putting someone else's glass through their toughening plant in case it breaks, because if the glass breaks during the toughening process, they have to stop production and clean out the machine of all of the fragments of glass, and they're very unhappy about that. So yeah, so asking someone else to fire your glass, you've got to be careful about, be very clear what it is you're asking people to fire if you're trying to source a larger company to fire your glass. In Europe, you could contact the European studios like Derek Studios in Taunenstein near Frankfurt in Germany, or Peter's Studio in Paderborn in Germany, both amazing companies. They have lots of huge kilns. I went over to Peter's Studio a year or so ago, and they have massive kilns that fire meters and meters, like 6 meter long pieces of glass, like huge big kilns. But again, you'd have to make inquiries as to whether they'd be prepared to fire larger pieces of glass. John, loads of questions today. It's wonderful that you're asking lots of questions. Does sunlight fade the colors over time? Not if it's traditional paint that's fired in a kiln, John. That is permanent glass paint. Silver stain lasts forever and a day. Paints, if they're well fired on, will last many, many centuries. Enamels will also last for many hundreds of years, but are not quite as durable as paints or stains, but still will last a great deal of time. Enamels are susceptible to acids, and paints are susceptible to condensation. If there's condensation over long periods of time on the painted surface, it can make it unstable. But to answer your question, no, the colors, generally speaking, do not fade over time in sunlight. Ride Forth singing Cascade Lead from Vancouver, Canada. Yes, it needs stretching. Thank you so much. Ride Forth singing Cascade Lead from Vancouver in Canada needs stretching. Generally speaking, I tend to stretch most of my lead most of the time, because it just straightens out all of the kinks, and you start with a nice sort of level straight length of lead, which can be sort of up to 3 meters in length, which is, quite a long length of lead that you might then cut down into smaller manageable sizes on your kiln. But it does help to stretch your lead. It really does. Especially if the lead is soft. Therese Rogers says, yes, Cascade, and I do stretch mostly. RH4 round head. That's a 1/4 inch, is quite floppy, so I do stretch. Yeah, the quarter lead is a small gauge lead, so in Europe that would be like a 5mm gauge lead. That's metric. In imperial, it's 1/4 inch. Quite, floppy and soft. It's a very malleable material, lead. So stretching it is usually the way forward. And so I would recommend you get into the habit of stretching lead, unless it is, as I say, a very hard lead that you don't need to stretch. Charlotte, did you read the bit about mixing paint with earwax? I did, Charlotte. I just told everyone in chat about adding earwax to your paint to stop it frothing if you're using vinegar. Amazing, eh? Can you use your cat's earwax? I wonder, Charlotte. It's weird, isn't it? It's weird. I mean, I don't know who discovered it, but somebody obviously either was picking their ear and a bit dropped in it, and they just decided, oh, what the hell, I'll leave it in the paint mix. You wonder how people discover these things, but yeah, fascinating. HM Fan 2010 says, what? Yeah, what? Yeah, you're right in terms of earwax. Dean Brown says, just got to go out and get some cotton buds. Ha! Yeah, I know, it's a weird one, eh? Earwax. If you get this book, Time and Temperature, by the amazing glass painter Jonathan Cook, you can read all about it. Time and Temperature. I was actually just reading about it earlier on this week. Fascinating, and it's one of these little books that there's lots of little tidbits in here. You can sort of dip into it as and when you need to. Yeah, it makes you wonder how anybody ever discovered earwax. Yeah, exactly right, Forth Singing. I'm in Canada. Are you, John? Okay, yeah. So I can't help you, but maybe someone in chat can help you with regard to Teresa Rogers. Do you know Canada where you might be able to find someone who could fire large pieces of glass for John Hayes? Tell us in chat. This is a community and we share our knowledge together. So someone in chat today might be able to help you, John, with a Canadian contact. Sarah Art and Glass says, haha, learning something new every week here. Yeah, me too. I'm still learning. I love it. I love it when you learn something new. A little nugget of information. It's great, isn't it? HM Fan 2010 says, earwax. I suppose that's not so odd considering they use urine to tan leather. Yeah, and they also use urine in making paint as well, stained glass paint. Yes, if you didn't know, urine has been used for centuries to mix paints, whether it's human urine or animal urine. But in the tannin factories where the leather was soaked in urine, I think they used human urine. I think they used animal urine. Basically, the ammonia in the urine was having the desired effect, and urine was used as a mixing agent for paint as well. I suppose there's some fats in urine, and there's the ammonia. I don't fancy it at all myself. The modern equivalent would be a vinegar, like a white vinegar, a white wine vinegar, or a malt vinegar. But generally speaking, I don't use malt vinegars. I tend to use just straightforward white vinegar. Yeah, Charlotte, they used to mix urine with paint too. It's a disgusting world, isn't it? Earwax and urine. It's amazing, but it's true. That's what was used. I suppose centuries ago, you used whatever was to hand. You just used whatever was to hand. Centuries ago, when kilns were first being used to fire paints, charcoal was being used. And charcoal was a high burner, getting up to temperature, and then coal was used, and because coal was cheaper than charcoal, it could bring the price down of firing paints. And then coke was used as an alternative instead of coal, which again brought the price down. And so different materials that were at hand would be used throughout the centuries, and the whole process of stained glass evolves slowly through those centuries depending on the accessibility of materials. Seaweed is also used in stained glass. Kelp is used as one of the 3 ingredients in making glass. Silica and kelp. So yeah, lots of really interesting natural ingredients are used in what we do. John says, long time ago I bought carnival glassware shaped like a hen dish. Very beautiful. I'm not fond of depression glass. For me, it's more of a dull color. Do you own glassware? I do not own glassware, John. I don't collect glassware. if you're talking about dishes and things like that. I don't collect those. Bethany Nazaday says, I'm in America and yes, we stretch our lead. Thanks, Bethy. Thanks, Bethy, for confirming that you also stretch lead. Teresa Rogers says, unfortunately, no, I'm in Texas. Charlotte says, have you ever used copala oil? Jonathan's books mentions that too. No, I haven't. Copaiba oil. No, I haven't. I've seen him mention it and I'm not 100% sure what it is. Charlotte, if you have a moment, could you look it up and tell us what copaiba oil is? I'm sure it's some additive to is it like a gum arabic? I'm imagining it might be like a gum arabic, like a binding agent. But do tell us, Charlotte, if you get the chance to look up exactly what it is. EFO says needs must when you have to make your paint go further. Karen Devan says, I hope I won't need to use earwax, but I've just ordered a kiln and I'm looking forward to trying everything I've learned watching your videos. Yeah, you don't need to try the urine trick, Karen, but yeah, try the earwax. Thunderwood Underwood says, at least urine is a natural product and they'd always have some handy sooner or later. Paula J says, copaiba. Yeah, do tell us, chat. Somebody look it up on Google and tell us exactly what that product is. I'm imagining it is a binder of some description. Yehudith says, maybe missing something, but when you mix paint with vinegar, do you use gum arabic? Yeah, you can use gum arabic. Interestingly, if you were watching my stream last week, I filmed Petri painting with vinegar and I asked him, does he add gum arabic to his vinegar? If you're adding that, quite a lot of that to say a strong vinegar mix, like a 20% acetic acid mix, I've found that the gum arabic can begin to curdle and thicken and it doesn't work as intended. But I have found that the sprinkling gum arabic, the powder gum arabic, when I tend to use that with vinegar mix, and that doesn't tend to curdle. That tends to work very well. So to answer your question, Yehudith, you can use gum arabic with vinegar, or you can not use gum arabic with vinegar. Both will be fine. I tend to think that paint without gum arabic will work fine. I actually think it will work fine. So you don't need to add any gum arabic if you don't want to. But certainly on my courses, when I've been filming courses, my online courses which people buy, one of the modules was about vinegar mixes, and I specifically go into the different types of vinegar and the different strengths of vinegar, and I add powdered gum arabic during the mixing process to that. But just as a word of caution, too much gum arabic can curdle with your vinegar mix as well, so just be aware of that. Paula G says, ingenious use for I don't quite know what that word is, Paula J. John Hayes says, old times used a lot of natural ingredients, plants ground down from pigmented colours. Yeah, absolutely right, John. Copala is a resin and never heard for painting, but a curative. Yeah, copaiba oil, very interesting. Is there a method ratio then when you're using vinegar and other ingredients? Yes, there's methods and there's ratios, John. Yeah, I mean, you'll find on my YouTube channel there are a variety of different videos on different paint mixes, whether you're mixing with water and gum arabic or whether you're mixing with vinegars. There are different strength vinegars. Yeah, so I mean, it's quite a big topic in itself. We won't go into all of the details of that today. Continue to colorize our skull here over the next few days, and then we'll move on to something else. So we'll continue our live stream with a new topic, but I'd just like to be able to sort of make these little videos and show them on the stream as a way of showing you what I've been working on during the day, and also answering your questions in real time. So it is now 9:30, guys. We've been streaming for an hour. Let me ask, do you have any more questions in chat? I'm here for another 5 or 6 minutes. Happily answer your questions if you have any more questions. So we have here, Have you ever tried mixing enamels and silver stain and firing it? I know the two are fired at different temperatures, but what would happen to the silver stain at a higher temperature? Would it work? Well, yes, the last piece I fired enamels and silver stain on the same piece of glass, and it fired fine. You do run the potential risk of the contamination of the yellow silver stain. The silver stain is quite tricky, and it doesn't like to be in close proximity to certain types of paints, usually iron oxide paints. But iron oxide is the tracing black and bister brown. Those are the paints that can corrupt silver stain. The enamels, I think, to a lesser extent. I don't think they corrupt the silver stain to the same extent because they're made of a different material. But to answer your question, yes, I can fire them all at the same time. Yellow silver stain, the higher you fire it, the higher temperature you fire it at, the more you run the risk of it spoiling or metaling. The term is metaling, which is a weird term to use, but basically it means the yellow silver stain stops being transparent and starts to become a little bit opaque, which is not really what you want. When we were watching the video, I had a look at Copaiba balsam. And it says here, it is used as a binder in traditional glass painting. Copaiba balsam is mixed with ground up frit and minerals to form a paint that is applied to the glass. So, as suspected, it is used as a binder to help the paint fix to the surface of the glass. It is a resin used in oil-based glass painting as a pigment vehicle for frit and mineral powders, providing a slow-drying medium that allows for building up layers of colour on the glass. It can also be used in the Pettenkofer process, which I don't know what that is, to revive and improve the appearance of brittle or dull dried paint films on glass. Though its use in this context can be temporary, as it remains susceptible to solvents and dust. So it seems to be quite a flexible material that's used in the glass industry for building layers. Its slow drying nature allows for a careful building up of coloured layers on glass, a technique known as closed oil painting. So it's not something that I've used, but I may try and get hold of some to play around with it. Jonathan Cook has talked about that and recommended it in his book, so it is always worth paying attention to what other glass artists recommend, because we can always learn something new. Let's see if there's more questions here. John says, I wasn't sure, but the video you did look like you did a wash, then possibly you fired the piece, then it looked like you did a second. Was on the image of a girl. Oh yes, when I was doing the girl, that particular, I mean, there's so many. I've made over 800 videos now, John, so there's lots of different videos floating around on my channel about different topics, and one of them was painting an image of a girl, which actually was one of my daughters. And there are multiple layers of paint applied, fired in the kiln, and other layers applied, fired in the kiln, and you can do that as many times as you need until you are happy with the outcome. So yeah, you can do lots of different washes. You're quite right to surmise that that was the case. Yehudith says, in 3 weeks, understanding better. Yes, Yehudith, in 3 weeks' time, you will be with us in the studio. Can't wait to meet you in person and show you these techniques, and we can work on them together in person in my studio. There is no substitute for learning with someone in person, and you can learn a lot of subtle things that are hard to sometimes convey on a video. You know, how you move around the studio, the speed that you move, how you hold your brushes, the amount of pressure that you apply, the weight of the brush, the consistency of the paint, the speed that you work, all of those things. When you're watching somebody painting, you pick up on all those subliminal messages, and so, you know, watching in live and learning live in person is definitely the top level way to learn anything, and I think for glass painting it is the best way to learn. So can't wait to spend some time with you, Yehudith, in the studio. Sarah, Art and Glass says, can you repeat fire enamels as you add more layers? Is there a maximum number of times you can fire, or does it burn off too much? Great question, Sarah. Yes, you can add to the density of color with enamels. Enamels tend to be, because they're transparent, they tend to be can be quite wishy-washy and quite thin. You need to badger them with your badger brush, or silk screen printing enamels is a way. James or Jim at Halt Glass screen prints all of his enamels, and he gets the most intense, wonderful colors by loading the glass with screen printed enamels. But I tend to use the traditional method, which is applying it by brush. But you can airbrush enamels as well, and you can build up the layers. Just bear in mind, Sarah, that once an enamel has been fired in the kiln, it has a glossy finish, and it's quite difficult sometimes to paint on that glossy finish. If you imagine trying to paint onto plastic, you know, the paint bubbles up on top of the plastic, it doesn't get absorbed by the plastic. Well, that's very much like painting on fired enamels. Enamels have a gloss finish. So I found to get over that, I've had to add a little bit more gum arabic to my second layer of enamels to help the new enamel layer bind and stick to the glossy fired finish of the previous enamel layer. So it can be done. The other way to do it is to simply paint the color on a second piece of glass and layer it up. Then you can intensify the color pigmentation by adding layers of glass one behind the other. John says, good night everyone, had a great evening, gotta go, looking forward to learning more. Okay guys, it is now, we've been going for an hour, over an hour now, and loved all the questions, loved spending time with you. Do continue to support the channel. Thank you so much to my top fans in top places, John Hayes 6414, and the Ride Forth singing second, Dean Browett in third, and Karen Devan in fourth, and Charlotte in fifth. Top fans for today's live stream. Thank you so much guys for joining me today. Loved spending time with you, loved showing you what I've been working on today. Let's do it all again next Tuesday, God willing. If this computer packs in, so help me, I'm going to chuck it out the window. But hopefully I'm going to try and get the whole thing sorted so that we don't have these problems moving forward. Thanks again. Take care guys. Love you all. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.